The Pushovers Trap. They tried to steal my $950,000 house. For years, Julian Vance was the family pushover, the quiet guy they expected to roll over and let his charismatic, scheming brother Marcus and manipulative mother Eleanor walk all over him. When his grandparents left Julian a $950,000 coastal villa and their entire fortune, the family saw it as an opportunity. They attempted a sophisticated fraud, trying to steal the house right out from under him with fake paperwork and smug smiles. They thought Julian was unprepared. They were dead wrong. The quiet man was watching, listening, and planning. And his meticulously executed countermove didn't just save his inheritance, it cost them everything. What's the biggest betrayal you've ever had to fight back from? Drop a comment and let me know where you're reading this from. I'm Julian Vance, 30 years old, and for most of my life, my family assumed I was the kind of person who would simply concede when trouble arose. I was the quiet, agreeable one, the one who avoided conflict. Perhaps that used to be true, but when my grandparents passed and left their estate entirely to me, the coastal villa, their investments, and stocks worth just under $950,000, something in me changed. I began to pay close attention. I started listening more carefully. And crucially, I began to strategize, knowing full well the nature of my immediate family. My brother, Marcus, is 2 years my junior. He is loud, charismatic, and flashy, the sort of man who could spin a lie and still convince you to fund his next big venture. He had a long history of mishaps, maxed out credit cards in our mother's name, a leased sports car that disappeared without a trace, and every single time our mother, Eleanor, would step in to rescue him, claiming he was still finding his path. Meanwhile, I was always expected to be the reliable one, the safety net, the ever-present fallback. I decided I was finished with that role. Our grandfather died a year and a half ago, following our grandmother by 6 months, and he left the entire estate to me alone, which didn't surprise me. I had been their sole caregiver when no one else bothered to call or visit. I managed their medical appointments, handled all their financial paperwork, and ran their errands. Marcus, by contrast, would make a brief appearance at the annual summer barbecue, snap a few photos for social media, and vanish until the next major event. When the will was read and only my name was on the documents, I distinctly recall the look our mother gave me, a disappointed, tight-lipped expression, as if I had stolen something I wasn't entitled to. That moment confirmed a confrontation was inevitable. The central asset was the property, a stunning Art Deco villa in Southampton, California, with sweeping lines, curved balconies, and a view of the Pacific Ocean. It was a multi-generational residence, and my grandparents had maintained it flawlessly. The local real estate market had soared, yet they held on to it, and now it belonged to me. I didn't immediately move in. I kept my condo across town and quietly began the process of securing the assets. I got the property professionally appraised, consulted a trust and estates lawyer, and established a legal trust, covering the house and all other assets. I kept this information private. No one was told, not Marcus, not Eleanor. I stored the original property deeds securely and placed the house, title, and all financial savings into an irrevocable trust with myself as the sole trustee. I even transferred the property's utilities into a shell company name connected to the trust. The cost was worth the peace of mind, as I knew my family well enough to anticipate their actions. For a time, things were unnervingly quiet. Marcus occasionally messaged, asking to use the boat dock, which the property does not possess. Eleanor subtly suggested how unfair it was to leave everything to just one child. She even remarked, "Your brother was always your grandfather's favorite, you know," as if that were legally binding. I simply acknowledged her and changed the subject. I avoided arguing or correcting them. I allowed them to believe I was unprepared and naive. The true conflict erupted last month. Marcus started posting obscure updates online. Major deals on the horizon. New chapter unlocked. Then, one Saturday, as I was tending to the landscaping at the villa, I saw Eleanor's sedan pull into the drive. Marcus jumped out, wearing a self-satisfied smirk and expensive sunglasses, as if arriving for a media event. Eleanor followed, holding a tablet and smiling like a property developer at a groundbreaking ceremony. "Hey, man," Marcus said, patting me condescendingly on the shoulder, "we have news." I simply raised an eyebrow. Eleanor stepped forward. "We consulted an attorney. It turns out the villa should have been left to both of you. Your grandfather made a clear error by not updating the document after your grandmother's passing. But don't worry, we fixed it." I stared at her. Fixed what, precisely? Marcus dramatically produced a folded paper. "We had the property title transferred to my name. It's official. You'll need to vacate by Friday, but no hard feelings, right? We'll give you time to collect your things." I was silent for a moment, looking at their smug, audacious faces. My heart wasn't racing. I almost chuckled, because they genuinely thought I was a fool. I offered a slight, unnerving smile. "Do you really think I wouldn't have prepared for this?" Marcus laughed as if I'd made a poor joke. "It's already happened, Julian. You're out of touch." Eleanor chimed in, using a false tone of sympathy. "We aren't trying to be cruel, Julian. It's simply logical. Marcus can manage the property, perhaps renovate it. You have your own condo. This benefits everyone." I didn't argue. I slowly nodded. Understood. 2 days later they returned, this time with a large rental truck and 2 professional movers. I had expected them. They drove into the driveway as if they already owned the world, talking loudly. Marcus was sipping an iced drink, while Eleanor directed the movers toward the front door. Then they stopped. I was standing on the porch, arms crossed, next to a tall, imposing man in a charcoal suit. He held a hefty folder and wore a county badge on his lapel. The folder had the name of my trust printed on it, a name they had never heard. The badge and the man were from the County Department of Land Records. They froze instantly. Marcus, confused, stepped forward. "What is this?" I didn't speak. The man in the suit, Mr. Chen, took the lead. Mr. Chen cleared his throat with the calm confidence of an official who had handled such situations countless times. He glanced at the document in his hand. "Are you Marcus Vance?" he asked. Marcus frowned, clearly thrown. "Yeah, who's asking?" Mr. Chen took a small step. "I am with the County Department of Land Records. I am here on behalf of the legal trustee of the Southampton Coastal Trust, which owns this property." He gestured toward the villa. "I have documentation confirming the deed has been held in an irrevocable trust since February of last year, managed by Julian Vance. Any attempt to claim ownership of this property since that date, including fraudulent title transfers, is not only invalid, but is an act of real estate fraud, subject to criminal prosecution." Marcus's face instantly lost all color. "Fraudulent?" he whispered, looking to Eleanor. "What is he talking about?" Eleanor advanced, her lips thin. "There must be an error. We had a lawyer examine the old deed. It was still in your grandfather's name. We presumed—" "You presumed incorrectly," I interjected, finally breaking my silence. "I never placed the property directly in my name. It is legally owned by a trust. That's why you couldn't find any public records. You went to a questionable title service and attempted to forge a transfer using an outdated document." Mr. Chen confirmed. "I have already filed a report regarding the attempted title claim. Typically, we issue a formal warning, but given the severity of the situation, bringing movers, threatening eviction of the legal trustee, we are proceeding directly to enforcement." Marcus blinked. "Enforcement?" I turned to face him squarely. "It means if you ever step onto this property again without my explicit permission, you will be arrested for trespassing. And if you tamper with the trust or its assets, you will face multiple felony charges." For a tense, prolonged moment, no one spoke. The movers stood frozen by their truck, looking like they wanted to vanish. One of them subtly retreated toward the driver's side. Marcus finally spoke, his voice cracked. "You would do this to your own family." My voice remained steady. "Family? You arrived here with a forged title and a moving crew. You tried to steal the one thing Grandpa and Grandma wanted me to have. Don't talk to me about family." Eleanor's jaw tightened. "They were just confused, Julian. They didn't understand." "No," I said, cutting her off sharply. "You didn't understand. You assumed I was still the pushover I was at 20. The child you could manipulate into giving up everything to resolve Marcus's latest crisis. I am not that person. I paid attention, and I was prepared." Mr. Chen added, flipping through his folder. "Also, for complete clarity, we have notified the local precinct. Should either of you attempt to return based on any property claim, a file will be ready for both civil and criminal action." Marcus's eyes flashed with anger, but he said nothing. He turned to the movers and snapped, "We're leaving. Now." He refused to look at me again. Eleanor lingered for a moment, her mouth slightly open, likely searching for one final manipulative line, but no words came out. She followed him in silence. The rental truck sped out of the driveway, its lights disappearing down the coastal road. A profound silence descended, the kind that follows a years-long conflict. Mr. Chen gave me a copy of the filed report. "Call us if they return." I thanked him. After he left, I stood on the porch where my grandfather used to sit and talk about truly knowing people, not just by what they said, but by their predictable behaviors. "Don't judge people by what they say in the heat of the moment. Judge them by what they do when they think you're not observing." He was correct. I had observed, and finally acted. But the saga wasn't over. 3 days later, I received a formal, typed letter, signed by a different lawyer, one hired by my mother. In it, she claimed severe emotional distress and argued that as a direct descendant, she held a moral and familial right to a portion of the estate. She demanded financial compensation for the mental anguish caused by her exclusion. Attached was a list of her reasonable reparations: $150,000 in liquid cash, joint ownership of the villa, and a monthly stipend until further notice. I stared at the paper. Numbness quickly gave way to a cold, shaking rage. She wasn't finished, and now neither was I. I must have read the letter 6 times. Initially, I tried to rationalize it, to believe she didn't fully grasp the implications. By the 6th reading, all denial was gone. My mother had officially tried to bill me for preventing her and Marcus from stealing what Grandpa and Grandma wanted me to have. It wasn't primarily the money, but the sheer, audacious entitlement, the nerve to call it a misunderstanding one day, then send a formal 5-figure demand the next, as if this were a simple business negotiation. The phrase that echoed loudest in my mind was familial obligation, implying that loyalty and resources flowed one way, upward,
to them, as if my purpose was to give and theirs was to take. I refused to respond immediately. I phoned Mr. Chen, who referred me to a sharp estate attorney named Sofia Rodriguez. She was in her early 40s, composed and intensely focused, the kind of professional who never bluffed. I provided her with everything: the trust documents, Eleanor's lawyer's letter, and screenshots of Marcus's online New Chapter campaign.
Within a day, Sophia had filed a formal cease and desist against both of them. The message was unequivocal. The trust was legally shielded and impenetrable. But Sophia dug deeper. She uncovered that Marcus had forged multiple signatures during the fraudulent title attempt. He had even used a fake notary stamp and filed it through a dubious online registry in a neighboring state, hoping it would slip past our local county records. Sophia contacted a fraud investigator at the district attorney's office. It turned out they were already investigating that very registry for a pattern of forged filings. Unknowingly, Marcus had walked right into a pre-existing investigation. I maintained my silence toward my family. I figured if they wanted to escalate, I would let them keep digging their own hole. And they did. 2 weeks after the cease and desist, I received another letter, this one less formal, sent directly from my mother. It was typed, but clearly her voice, filled with passive-aggressive lines like, "After all I've sacrificed for you. You were always the quiet one, and I raised you to be better." She ended with, "You can stop this immediately by simply doing the right thing. Families shouldn't need lawyers to solve things that love and understanding can resolve." I didn't respond. Sophia advised against it. Instead, I forwarded the letter to her to be added to the growing file we were assembling, which could be used for a restraining order if necessary. Then came the final straw. One morning, I found a crudely folded note stuck in my mailbox. It wasn't addressed, just jammed in the door. I recognized the handwriting instantly. Marcus's. The note read, "Hope you're enjoying playing king of the castle. Just remember who's got your back when the money dries up." I laughed, a small, tired chuckle that happens when you realize someone is truly oblivious to how far behind you they are. I scanned the note, added it to the file, and made a firm decision. I wasn't just going to defend myself anymore. I was going to counterattack. Marcus was already under investigation for fraud. Sophia pointed out that proving intentional malice or harassment would allow us to escalate the case. The criminal courts would do their part, but there was another area where Marcus was vulnerable: his professional life. He had recently secured a position at a boutique luxury real estate brokerage, a flashy firm that prioritized its brand image. I did some research and learned they promoted an ironclad commitment to ethical property transfers. I wondered if they'd be proud of an employee who tried to steal his brother's house with fake paperwork. But I held off on acting impulsively. I waited. Then, something I hadn't foreseen occurred. My cousin, Lauren, whom I hadn't spoken to in years, reached out to me. She messaged me online. "Hey, can we talk? Your mother's been calling everyone in the family, spreading some stories. I thought you should know." We met for coffee. Lauren had always been direct and honest, and that hadn't changed. She showed me messages and a group chat with 2 other cousins. Eleanor had initiated a smear campaign. She was claiming I had manipulated our grandfather in his final years, convincing him to alter his will while his mental health was fragile. She even implied I had emotionally, legally, and perhaps medically exploited him. It was a complete character assassination. I felt a wave of nausea. I understood then that this wasn't about the house or the money anymore. It was about control. Eleanor could not tolerate that I had successfully said no, that I had protected something from her influence. Now she intended to ruin my reputation for it. Lauren looked at me. I don't believe her, and neither do Sam or Chris, But she won't stop. She's calling everyone. I nodded, my heart pounding. Thank you for the warning. I barely slept that night. That was the pivotal moment. If she was willing to lie to the entire family, to destroy my character just to pressure me into relinquishing what was legally mine, then I had to be willing to end this decisively. Not only for my own protection, but to ensure neither she nor Marcus could ever do this to anyone else again. What I did next did not rely solely on legal documents. I spent the next 2 days in my office plotting. The trust was legally secure, but their smear campaign was rapidly spreading. Vague texts from distant relatives began to arrive. Just checking in, or heard some rumors, hope they're false. Eleanor had been busy. She wasn't just trying to seize the assets. She wanted to obliterate my credibility so thoroughly that no one would believe my side of the story. If I allowed that to happen, I knew the next steps. Guilt trips, pressure from relatives, and gaslighting from every corner of the family until I was forced to concede a portion for the sake of peace. I saw the trap. I refused to enter it. So I built a counter-trap. Sophia helped me draft a legal declaration of facts, supported by all the evidence we had collected. The fraudulent title application, the fake notary stamp, Eleanor's letters, the attempted seizure, and the smear campaign. I included scanned copies of Lauren's messages, voicemails of my mother calling me a greedy manipulator, and the lawyer's ridiculous demand for $150,000.
But I didn't just file it with the court. I sent a simplified, easily readable version to every single relative Eleanor had contacted. My message was brief. I understand certain claims have been made. Before you finalize your opinion, I want you to have the documented facts, not just stories. I've attached everything you need to see. I will not discuss this again. If you believe me, fine. If not, that is your choice, but at least you will be making it with the complete truth. I hit send to 27 contacts. The reaction was immediate. Within hours, I received 5 replies from relatives I hadn't seen in years. Most were deeply apologetic. My Aunt Vivian, who had always treated Marcus as a golden boy, called me crying that evening. She had believed Eleanor until she saw the forgery, the demand letter, and the folder of proof. "I didn't know. I swear I didn't know. Julian, I am so sorry." I didn't solicit apologies. I simply told her I hoped she now understood my position. Not everyone reacted positively. 3 relatives, all on my mother's side, doubled down, claiming I had manufactured the documents. I knew I couldn't win everyone over. But for every one of those, I had 5 others who reached out with support. Then came the consequence for Marcus. I reached out to his employer anonymously through their internal ethics hotline. It wasn't a vague warning. It was a complete PDF report, organized and labeled with exhibits. It detailed the attempted fraudulent property transfer, the misuse of legal documents, and the potential for real estate crime using their firm's reputation. I thought it might take a week. It took 2 days. Marcus's name was removed from the company website by the end of the week. According to a contact in the local real estate compliance office, an old university friend, the firm initiated an internal audit immediately upon receiving the complaint. They discovered other discrepancies in Marcus's client files. He wasn't just fired. He was reported to the state licensing board. His license was frozen pending a full investigation. He tried to call me that day. 11 missed calls. I answered none of them. That weekend, he posted an image on his social media. A black screen with the text, "Some people will destroy your life and then pretend they're the victim."
He didn't have to name me. Everyone who mattered already knew the truth. But it still wasn't finished. 2 days later, I received a formal notice from the county. The fraudulent title application had triggered legal action. Marcus was being formally charged with attempted fraudulent property transfer and submitting falsified documents to a government agency. I stared at the notice for a long time. I was numb. This was never the outcome I desired. I didn't want to ruin him, but his actions had left no alternative. He was quietly arraigned, no fanfare, just a court date, a lawyer he couldn't easily afford, and a future full of legal complications. He likely wouldn't face jail time, probably probation, fines, and community service. But the criminal record would follow him. Jobs would be significantly harder to secure. As for Eleanor, she went completely silent after the evidence was made public. No calls, no apologies, no further demands. About 2 months later, I received a letter, not from her, but from her attorney. A carefully worded note stating she was officially withdrawing all pending legal claims regarding the trust and requesting no further contact. In essence, she conceded defeat. I felt no joy or triumph, only a deep sense of freedom. That evening, I drove to the old villa and walked slowly, barefoot, across the terrazzo floors. The air was calm, scented with sea salt and old wood. The house was quiet, peaceful, entirely mine. I stood in the sunroom where my grandfather used to read and whispered. I kept it safe, just as I promised. I believe he would have been proud. In the end, I didn't just keep the villa. I preserved my integrity and my future. Marcus lost his career. Eleanor lost her ability to manipulate. And I gained something they never expected: the strength to refuse to be their victim. For the first time in my life, I was no longer the quiet one.
That's how I finally closed that chapter. Standing on the porch of the villa, looking out at the Pacific, I realized that my revenge wasn't the loss they suffered. It was the freedom I gained by refusing to be their victim anymore. It's a quiet freedom, but it's mine. I did what I had to do to protect what my grandparents gave me. I'm curious, have you ever had to draw a clear, sharp line with family to protect yourself or your assets? Let me know in the comments if you've had to choose self-preservation over peace. And don't forget to like this video and subscribe if you want to hear more stories about how the quiet ones finally fight back. Thanks for watching.